Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm watching Why Drivers Should Want Cycle Lanes by Mapman. This is part 2 to the video of why cycling isn't common in London. And I think in that video he was talking about the groups who didn't want the changes and the new cycle lanes. So maybe that's what he's going to talk about here. Also, there is plenty of reasons why drivers should want cycle lanes. I can name one: because I hate cyclists when they drive on the road, because cars and bikes don't mix.
There's a war going on London streets right now. Two tribes. Two wheels versus four wheels. Bicyclists versus carists.
Well, no need to make it so dramatic.
As both a cyclist and a driver, I hate myself. But should I? Is it true that to provide infrastructure for one tribe, you have to screw things up for the other? Or
no, you
can
don't.
we learn to live side by side? Or one behind the other? Or weaving in and out of each other?
Well, no, you don't have to ruin everything for the other party, but...
As discussed in the previous episode, we've now
doing
got
something for one side will affect
but
the other side in some
progress
way.
for cycling infrastructure has been somewhat grinding to a halt. The current mayor, Sadiq Khan, and I'm sorry to say this because I really like him, has been pretty rubbish for cycling. He's cancelled cycling projects left, right and straight down the middle. His only achievement so far has been the Quiet Ways. The Quiet Ways are a benign and barely noticeable network of signposts and tipex guiding cyclists onto less busy roads. But it's hard to imagine who will benefit from them. Not timid new cyclists, because they still have to share with cars, and not experienced cyclists, because they won't want to go the wiggly squiggly long way round. So, why is cycling being watered down in the capital? There are several different groups whose fault it is. In order to build cycle superhighways, TfL needs the cooperation of London's 32 local boroughs. The streets belong to them.
That's not going to happen.
And not all of them are enthusiastic about bikes. Kensington and Chelsea, the Slytherin of the London boroughs, has been the most obstructive of them all. CS9, which in the original proposal was meant to go all the way to central London, was cut back in 2016 to stop here at Kensington Olympia. And CS3, which was originally planned to go all the way to Acton, now stops here at Lancaster Gate. Coincidence? And it's not just the boroughs halting progress. Delays and cuts are also being caused by the curious Royal Parks Commission. The Royal Parks of London are technically private land belonging to the Queen, not the local boroughs.
My God.
So change here has always been slow and reluctant.
Electricity.
When the East-West Cycle Superhighway was announced, the Royal Parks dithered for so long over which way it should go through St James's Park, TfL were forced to publish this embarrassing...
It's a bloody park. Would it be that difficult to add a road for cyclists there? No, it would not. It would be incredibly easy and it would make basically no changes. And I don't think anybody would mind if they made that change happen.
Map with the route still not decided, long after construction had started. In a further poke in the tyres to cyclists, the Royal Parks installed speed bumps in Hyde Park on what used to be a really popular cycle route, hitting cyclists where it hurts the most. Their balls. And the Church of Our Lady of Grace and...
Speed bumps for cyclists. That has to be one of the stupidest things I have ever heard. Church asks congregation to pray to stop cycle lane that would cause more harm than the Luftwaffe. Are you fucking serious? Priest worries about speeding cyclists threatening bridal and funeral processions. Would that really be that much of a hindrance? I don't think so.
St Edward and Chiswick has been calling on their parishioners to literally pray for CS9 not to be built outside their church. So, why do all these groups of people hate
Ask
cyclists
God
so
to
much?
strike them
What's
down.
their beef? Why don't they like cycle lanes? What's wrong with bicycle infrastructure according to them? Why do they have a problem with bicyclists? What for them is the reason that cycle infrastructure is such a bad thing?
I'm assuming
They
most of
give
those
several
reasons
different
will be
reasons.
nonsense.
This man said that a cycle path would spoil the village-like atmosphere of Chiswick, but it was hard to hear him.
Stupid.
With the roar of traffic. Shopkeepers
okay.
in Walthamstow complained that the Mini Holland scheme, which removed car parking spaces, closed off rat runs and made the streets far more cycle-friendly, would cause all the shops to close down. But in fact, the opposite has happened and brought the area to life. So, Mrs. Panhandle from West Ruislip says,
Dear Unfinished London, why should the government spend millions of pounds on cyclists when it's us drivers who pay our road tax and cyclists pay nothing?
Oh my God. If that's real... I mean, look, people are stupid, I know, but this is a whole nother level. There's no way that's the representation of the average person, because if the average person is that fucking stupid, you have a whole nother problem you have to consider: education. Because holy shit. I guess cyclists don't pay taxes. Maybe I should become a cyclist. I should go on a bike everywhere, then I don't have to pay taxes, right?
F you, Mrs. Panhandle. First of all, if that were true, that would be a good thing. Cars produce way more wear and tear on roads than bikes do. And second of all, it's not true. Road tax is not there to fund roads. It's an income stream for the Treasury like any other, and they can spend it on whatever they like. You wouldn't say freeloading pedestrians don't deserve street lamps. Mrs. Panhandle's anti-cyclist attitude
Imagine
is
paying
sadly
for
quite
street
common.
lamps, just
This is
like
not
putting a
helped by the
coin in.
media. According to nearly every bike-related article you read about in the newspapers, cyclists are dangerous and irresponsible tearaways whose fault it usually is when an accident happens. And if they choose not to wear a helmet, well, they only had it coming. This really annoys me actually. The sort of people who say, why don't you wear a helmet, are usually the sort of people who've never ridden a bike in their lives, and they're only saying it because they want to absolve themselves of all responsibility for cyclist safety on the road.
A helmet's not gonna do much if a car hits you. If you fall off a bike, yeah, maybe your helmet will stop your head from getting more injured, but if a car hits you and you go flying off your bike, that helmet, I mean, yeah, it's gonna help a little bit, but it's not gonna do that much, because at that point, you're kind of fucked. I've never worn a helmet when I've ridden a bike, because why would I?
If you really want to make cycling safer, instead of giving everyone a helmet, give them a piece of paper saying, for God's sake, never ever go on the left of a lorry, because that's where almost every cycle death happens. By all means, wear a helmet if you want to. It could save your life if you're unlucky enough to land headfirst into anything. But as for making helmets compulsory, it doesn't make cycling safer. And if you don't believe me, look at Australia, a country where the wearing of helmets is mandatory and hardly anyone cycles, and then compare that to the Netherlands or Denmark, where everyone rides a bike and no one wears a helmet. You don't make an activity safer by discouraging people from doing it, you...
Whilst
Morons.
it's easy to dismiss these complaints as bunkum, there is one genuine, impossible to deny disadvantage that does come with the building of cycle superhighways.
What? The new cycle superhighway has necessitated the removal of a lane of traffic, resulting in increased congestion. Okay, I mean, yeah, that is a downside, but that's mostly just down to London not planning for the future, not planning ahead. So that's just pure incompetence from the government there. It used to be possible to go straight on at this junction, but now, since the cycle scheme, we are obligated to take a rather circuitous route. Did I say that correctly? I think I did. My journey along Upper Thames Street now takes me an extra 15 minutes because of the cycle path. Okay. I'm done. I'm not pausing anymore. It's just complaints
Yes, it's
about
true.
the same
Some
thing.
cycle lanes, especially the good ones, do indeed take away space that used to be available for cars. But unfortunately, there's nowhere else practical for these cycle lanes to go. Some audacious architects have come up with some innovative suggestions for where else to put cycle paths other than the surface streets. TfL proposed building
What, underground?
CS3 high up on the Westway, conveniently crossing Kensington and Chelsea without having to ask their permission. But this was cancelled in 2017 because it was impractical and terrifying and no one was ever going to use it. Norman Foster, the architect responsible for Boris Island, proposed a network of elevated cycle paths called Sky Cycle, floating above London's rail.
As if the British would be competent enough to make something like this happen. Yeah, no chance.
But this was even more unnecessarily elaborate, not to mention phenomenally expensive.
Yeah.
And finally, in my opinion, the underwhelmingest of them all, a series of lifts around the Strand going down to disused tube tunnels converted into cycle paths with the deeply uninspiring name The Underline, which I can think of at least 12 better names than. It's not rocket science. In cities like London, where the streets aren't getting any wider, cycle paths do have to go on the road. If only we could redesign London from scratch. Imagine if our streets were wide enough for cars, buses and bikes. That would be just perfect, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Stevenage, 32 miles north of London, a new town built from scratch in the 60s where planners weren't limited by space. There are beautiful, segregated cycle paths everywhere. But look, empty. The good people of Stevenage have no incentive to use their cycle paths. Their roads are just too acceptable. They don't get massive traffic jams even in rush hour, and all the shops have got free car parking, so why would they bother with the bike? What we learned from Stevenage is you don't just have to encourage people onto their bikes, you have to encourage them out of their cars. But what's wrong with cars? I'll tell you what's wrong with cars. Cars are incredibly space
Lots of
inefficient.
things.
That's what's wrong with cars. Look how many people are moving through the road when they're all in their cars. Not a lot. But watch what happens if you put them on bikes. Ooh! And it's not just bikers who benefit. Every single one of those new cyclists.
I mean, you know, there's also pollution, cars are far more expensive. There's plenty of reasons why cycling is better, although cycling is far slower, and obviously you have to be somewhat physically fit to go far distances.
Is someone no longer taking up space on the tube, on the bus, or in a car.
And
Yes,
it depends
even
whether
drivers
or not
benefit
you're
from cycle
lazy.
lanes in the long term. There will always be people that have to drive, like delivery vans and construction traffic and ambulances and giraffes in transit, and they'll all get where they're going much faster when the road is being used only by people that have a f***ing good excuse for being there. By the way, I haven't even been talking about pollution. It almost goes without saying that cars pollute.
He says
and
while
bikes don't.
smoking.
But you know what? Even if all cars were electric, they'd still be just as horribly space inefficient. This isn't about air. I haven't been talking about pollution. It almost goes without saying that cars pollute and bikes don't. But you know what? Even if all cars were electric, they'd still be just as horribly space inefficient. This isn't about air quality. It's about...
I mean, electric cars aren't really all that great either. They come with their own set of problems.
sustainability. But it's also about air quality. So hurting drivers is not merely a byproduct of improving cycling, it's a desired effect. Saying that a cycle scheme doesn't work because drivers are unhappy, it's a bit like saying that a diet doesn't work because it's making you hungry. London is not Stevenage. Its population is expected to hit 10 million by 2030. So if we're going to make room for everybody, cycling has to become more normal than driving. That's why I'm worried that cycle progress isn't progressing. There's still loads more to do. Huh? Ah. What was that? So, to sum up, things are getting better for cycling, but not better enough. Perhaps the most troubling thing about the cycle superhighways is that name, superhighways. It makes them sound like they're the best they could possibly be, like they're rare and exceptional. Whereas if you show them to a Dutch person, they just think they're normal.
They'll laugh at
they're
you.
the bare minimum. London's cycling revolution is unfinished. These cycle lanes won't realise their incredible potential until they're everywhere. The superhighways won't be super until there's nothing super about them. Ow! Ow! I can't feel my legs!
Alright, well, that's the end of that. Yeah, there's many reasons why drivers would want cycle lanes. My own main reason is because I hate cyclists who drive in the road. They are the absolute worst because they hold up traffic so much, especially when they're either on a busy road or a high-speed road. I said this in my last video about the cycle lanes. When I'm driving on a 90km/h road and there's cars coming both ways, and in front of me there's a bike, I can't overtake him because there's not enough space on my lane and there's cars coming from the other direction. So now I have to slow down to a bloody 20km/h or less, and I hold up traffic because this one fucking guy is riding a bike on a busy road where you go 90km/h, which means the majority of people are driving 100 to 110km/h because nobody drives the limit. Only very new drivers or old people drive the limit. Everyone else drives either +10 or +20 to whatever the limit is. That's a fact, you cannot deny it. So yeah, I just hate them because of that. And because they create extra risk when they drive on the road. Paying attention to pedestrians is hard enough, but when there's cyclists, that's a whole nother problem. I failed one of my driving exams because of a damn cyclist. Because there's a crossing. There was a crosswalk where cyclists are allowed to just drive over it. They don't have to get off their bike and walk. They can just drive over it. And there were bushes. So I couldn't see him. And he just suddenly drove out from the bushes. And I had to emergency stop and boom, exam failed. Was it my fault? Hardly. But yeah, I failed because of the damn cyclist. If I was in a place like that on a bike, I would go down, check to make sure there's no cars coming from either side, and then cross. Like, I get it. He can drive over there because he's allowed to do it on that crosswalk. But for safety reasons, he should check both ways anyway before just driving out like a fucking moron. Whatever. I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you're interested, why not watch this video right here? And with that, I hope I'll see you in the next video.